Nashville Public Radio serves Middle Tennessee in many ways every day, including through this podcast. You can support it by leaving a review or rating, by telling a friend about it, or by contributing at WPLN.org/give.
This is the Nash Villager Podcast. It's December 19th, 2025, and you could say that this day in 1980 is when Dolly Parton started to become more than just another country music star. Sure, she'd been famous for a while, famous for her songwriting skills, her soprano voice, her broad smile, and her sex appeal. But with the release of the movie 9 to 5, Dolly was able to start being taken more seriously as a person. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. 9 to 5 is a feminist workplace revenge fantasy that is very much of its time in a lot of ways, but that totally holds up. Dolly plays Dora Lee, secretary to the boss of a large office. She's good at her job, but all he seems to notice are her curves and her cleavage. The other women in the office can't look past those details either. Everyone assumes she's a useless ditz and that she's having an affair with him. But as the story progresses, she stands up for herself, befriends two coworkers who have their own problems with the boss, and, well, let's just say they turn the tables. The movie gave Dolly a chance to show the world that she wasn't just a pretty blonde with a nice voice. The theme song she wrote for the movie showed she could wrap up deep thoughts about gender and the plight of the common worker in an incredibly catchy melody that was really fun to sing along to. And the whole thing just started to open up the door to Dolly as herself, not a character, revealing the depth of her thoughtfulness and caring for very real issues, especially when it comes to disparities and education. Which, of course, has evolved over the years to people treating her almost like the patron saint of Tennessee, if not the nation as a whole. She invested in her economically depressed hometown, creating jobs and spurring more development by opening the Dollywood theme park. She paid for wildfire recovery efforts in Gatlinburg and helped underwrite the development of the Moderna COVID vaccine. She gave books to millions of children all over the world. Okay, so maybe she's a patron saint of more than just the U.S. Well, this has been an especially active year for Dolly News. It was just this March that her husband, Carl Dean, died. He was an immensely private man, and she honored that with announcing his death with a simple statement of her love for him and releasing a song dedicated to him. This was the year that Cruz worked to transform an office building on Commerce Street into her downtown Nashville outpost, a museum and hotel called The Songteller. That's expected to open next year. Just last month, she announced plans to transform one of the largest truck stops between Nashville and Huntsville into Dolly's Tennessean travel stop. In that press release, she said years of touring by bus has made her an expert in what travelers want and need, so why not get into that business herself? If all goes well, that's supposed to be the first location in a chain of Parton-style gas and food service plazas. In the spring, the Nashville Symphony premiered a new orchestral show of Dolly Parton hits that she developed to tour around the country. The debut performance of Dolly the Musical was in August at Belmont. This year is also when work began in earnest on a plan she announced late last year, a $4.5 million partnership with the Nashville Public Library to outfit every daycare center in the city with books. It's called Begin Bright, and it builds on the commitment she made to literacy with the Imagination Library. That's the long-standing program created and funded by Dolly that sends books directly to the homes of young children. And this new effort goes even further. Her gift is also funding research to study the impact that access to books has on the development of those children. But we also got a big scare this year. In September, Dolly announced she was postponing a Las Vegas residency that was originally scheduled to happen this month. She didn't say much about why she was changing her schedule, just that it had to do with her health. A few weeks later, a social media post from her sister asking people to pray for Dolly caused a panic. It turned out to have been overblown. But it was an uncomfortable reminder. She may be utterly amazing, but Dolly Parton is human. She's aging just like anyone. One day we won't have her anymore. And that's going to be a deep and heavy time of mourning for Nashville, but even more so for folks out in East Tennessee. But that day isn't here yet. Dolly is still with us, so here's to a 2026 that's hopefully chock full of even more of her news updates. In just a few minutes, the final installment of The Debt. That's coming up after the newscast.
At WPLN, we tell stories about honoring our families.
If he become a monk, that means that mom and dad will go to heaven when they pass away.
And preserving memories.
I never heard of a Rosenwald school. Nobody never told me that's where I went.
I'm Char Daston, and my reporting connects you with your neighbors and the important moments in their lives.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. A Tennessee appeals court will hear arguments on whether the National Guard can stay in Memphis. The Tennessee Lookout reports that expedited hearing is now set for early March. Back in October, Memphis Mayor Lee Harris and other officials filed a lawsuit blocking the deployment of the National Guard. The state appealed, and the court allowed the troops to remain while the legal process plays out. Members of the Guard have been there since October. Memphis leaders say the deployment violates the state constitution, which allows the governor to call the Guard only in the event of a rebellion or invasion, or when the General Assembly declares a public safety hazard. They say none of those conditions exist today. The state of Tennessee is suing the popular gaming platform Roblox, saying it slow-walked calls to protect children from online predators. The company promises a safe, creative space while failing to provide safeguards, State Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti says. The company also faces numerous other lawsuits, including one from a family in Iowa. That suit alleges a 13-year-old girl was found in Tennessee after being taken across state lines and sexually abused by a man she met on Roblox. Skrmetti called the platform the digital equivalent of a creepy cargo van lingering on the edge of a playground. Roblox counts tens of millions of daily users, many of them kids and teens. Country music star Jelly Roll was pardoned yesterday by Governor Bill Lee. The singer, legal name Jason DeFord, was convicted of robbery in 2003. 5 years later, while on parole, he was convicted of felony drug possession. Pardons in Tennessee work differently than federal pardons. In this case, it's a kind of official forgiveness for someone who's already completed a prison sentence. Lee says he pardoned the singer after an outpouring of support. Jelly Roll has said a pardon would make it easier for him to travel internationally for concerts. Staying warm is going to cost Tennesseans a lot more this winter. Latest data from two national energy groups shows that Tennessee will be among the top 10 states to experience the biggest increase to their electric bills, about a $32 increase. The data comes from the Energy Information Administration and the National Energy Assistance Directors Association. Its executive director says these increases may not sound drastic to higher income households, but for families already struggling, they're devastating. Cases of whooping cough in Nashville have tripled compared to last year amid a nationwide surge. The illness, also known as pertussis, is caused by bacteria that cling to tiny hair-like structures in the respiratory system and cause damage. The infection can be especially dangerous for infants. Kentucky, Mississippi, and Louisiana have reported infant deaths this year caused by whooping cough. The Tennessean reports local doctors are calling for people of all ages to get vaccinated to prevent the disease from spreading. For years, the vaccination rate among young children has fallen below what's needed for herd immunity. Importantly, infants under 2 months of age aren't eligible for the vaccine, so doctors recommend that expecting parents, grandparents, and others who will be in close contact with babies get vaccinated or boosted. The shots also protect against tetanus and diphtheria, and they offer that protection for up to 10 years. Nashville's newest business improvement district received final approval this week. Metro Council members gave the okay for the Midtown Central Business Improvement District to move forward. This would be a designated area around Music Row and Vanderbilt University. Property owners have agreed to pay an additional tax to fund public improvements and services not normally covered by the local government, such as street cleaning and private security. The tax is expected to earn $1.5 million in revenue annually. Listeners to This is Nashville memorialized family and friends in Middle Tennessee who died this year. Some were Nashville notables, including Bobby Kane, who was among the first black students to graduate from an integrated high school in Tennessee. He then got his degree from Tennessee State University and spent 2 years in the Army, rising to the rank of captain. Later in life, his daughter Yvette Kane says he always wore his Army hat, and when the Star-Spangled Banner played, he didn't just stand. He would salute, to the embarrassment of his children.
We'll be like, "Oh, Daddy, what are you doing? Put your hand down." And now I recognize how important that was to him. Now when I look around, I go to basketball games, football games, I don't see anyone doing that, and that just brings more memories back to me with him is how much he really respected his country and serving for him.
Bobby Kane died September 22nd. He was 85 years old. Our first ever In Memoriam show is available in the This Is Nashville podcast feed. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. What does the state of Tennessee owe its public university in Nashville, Tennessee State University? That's a complicated question. Lawmakers have already found that the state failed to properly pay out TSU's land grant funding for decades. But Crystal Sanders, a historian at Emory University, has identified another slice of funding that was unfairly taken. Reporters Camelia Burris and Emily Siner explain.
During segregation, Black students couldn't go to UT, and TSU had very few graduate programs. So Tennessee passed a law in 1937 saying that the state would pay for them to go to grad school out of state.
Such payments shall be made out of the funds appropriated by the state for the Agricultural and Industrial College for Negroes. Tennessee A&I is present-day Tennessee State University.
The money to send Black students out of state because UT wouldn't accept them came out of TSU's budget?
Yes.
That is wild.
We can clearly see how these institutions are being robbed, literally robbed, to preserve segregation.
And segregation scholarships, as Crystal Sanders calls them, worsen the financial strains on public HBCUs that were already struggling with poor state funding.
We will never know what could have been had there been pharmacy schools, law schools, medical schools, master's degree programs that are revenue generating put at these institutions in the 50s and 60s or even in the 40s.
When I started this story, I really wanted to come up with a number, a definitive number of what the debt was so that we could say, if we can just fund TSU this much, then the debt will be paid. And now we have Crystal Sanders saying there's so much more. The research hasn't even been done yet.
Right. Her point is that it's on Tennessee and every other southern state to do the research and do the math themselves, not because they feel like it, but because they care about their financial integrity.
This isn't charity. This is about a debt that the state owes, and states have to pay their debts.
Hearing Crystal Sanders say that, I think about how I didn't go to an HBCU. I don't have a personal family connection to TSU. I think a lot of people in power are the same. But this debt that the state owes affects all of us. We have missed out on having a well-funded public land-grant university in the state capital that could have brought more good-paying jobs and more innovation and more students to the state.
And not even just that, more people would have had the chance for social mobility. And I've heard this sentiment from everyone I talk to, including students who are on campus right now.
Me being from Memphis, I see TSU's impact every day, from its educators that it's breeded to politicians.
We have, as a society and as a state, have become too comfortable with TSU and schools like us doing what we can with less. And that paradigm has to end somewhere.
One thing we've been hearing in all the interviews for this story, including the students that you talked to on campus, was look at what this institution has managed to do, even with inadequate funding. And if it's accomplished this much so far,
imagine what it could do with the proper funding that it's owed.
Emily Siner and Camelia Burris are co-producers of The Debt, an hour-long special about the fight for fair funding at TSU. And you can find the whole story at WPLN.org/thedebt. Well, we do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nash Villager newsletter, too. You'll get perspective from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories we're following. Sign up for those daily emails at WPLN.org/NashVillager. Thanks so much for listening. Now, I'll be taking some time off for the holiday, but you're in for a treat. Like they did last year, some other folks in our newsroom are going to use this podcast feed to give you a year-end taste of one of my favorite things that we do behind the scenes. We call it Friday Praise. It's a weekly meeting where we share what's impressed us about each other's work. And so each day next week, someone from the team will highlight some of their favorite reporting done by another person at WPLN with an explanation of what stands out to them about it. It should be a good look back at what went on in the mid-state. I'll be listening right along with you, and then I'll be back to catch up with you again in our normal format after Christmas.